Hi, this is Stephen from Owner Disso. Have you ever wanted to have the fastest gaming performance in a 15-inch chassis? Well, perhaps you should consider the MSI GP66 Leopard. Now, HID Evolution were kind enough to send me one to review, but before we jump into that video, a quick word from our sponsor, AliExpress, who sent me their QCY T16 wireless Bluetooth headphones, which are IPX4 waterproof, so you're actually safe to use them out in the rain. And beginning the 25th of November, they have their Black Friday festival, at which time a pair will only cost $26.39. Plus, if you apply the coupon SALTEC in the description, you'll have an additional discount of $5 to $50 off, depending on how many you actually buy. They are powered by the Qualcomm Bluetooth 5.2 chip, allowing for aptX adaptive, providing CD quality audio and low latency, so you can use them for gaming. With CVC 8.0, the T16 can also reduce ambient noises when chatting on the phone. The earbuds have 7.2mm drivers, which does make audio sound very good, and the battery life is rated at 22 hours.
Now, what I did like about it, it's easy to get into, easy to open up the case, and easy to sync up your phone. You just open up the case and it syncs up with your phone with Bluetooth easily. Now, I did test them on a telephone call. That worked really well, nice and clear. Also, gaming, they came out through nice and clear as well. You do have good directional awareness, and of course, triple pressing the right hand side, you do get low latency mode as well. Now, of course, it's very easy to control these earpods because you don't have separate buttons to press, which can be a bit of a nightmare. It's all controlled by the face. So all in all, I must say I do like them. They're cheaper than some of the competitor models you have, and they work flawlessly for me. Easy to use, and the audio is nice and clear.
Now, over at HID Evolution, there are two models of the MSI GP66 Leopard. My unit with the 140 watt RTX 3080 starts at $2,049, and the RTX 3070 model at $1,799. Now, the only panel option is the 1080p 144Hz, which is a shame, as one would like to have at least a QHD option or Full HD 360Hz to pair with this 3080. But basically, MSI positions the GP66 to be the cheaper version of the GE66, so they had to cut some costs. The GE66 has G-Sync, whilst the GP66 does not. Now, the panel was okay. Ghosting performance was decent enough, and at 312 nits it was bright as well, but unfortunately it was only 92% of sRGB and 68% of Adobe RGB. It also showed no backlight bleeding, which is nice. Another area where they also cut costs compared to the GE66 was in its ports, which I was a little bit disappointed with. You do get 4 USB Type-A ports, but there is no USB-C or Thunderbolt port, nor any SD card reader. Now, at least you do get a mini DisplayPort 1.4, but the HDMI is limited to 4K at 60Hz. The i7-11800H CPU is quite a powerhouse though, scoring a multi-core score of 12,359 and a single-core score of 1,447 in a 10-minute run of Cinebench R23. This puts it slightly ahead of the Ryzen 7 5800H. However, the PL1 of 75 watts in extreme performance mode makes it hard to keep cool, even with the fans at maximum. Even applying a negative 50 mV undervolt and a max fan, the CPU was still at 95 degrees. And this is with HID Evolution repacing it with G-Lid GC Extreme. Now, the undervolt did lead to a higher score of 12,657 points though. It must be noted that out of the box undervolting is locked out within the BIOS, so one has to activate it via the advanced BIOS menu. Now, I did stick up negative 50 mV as 70 mV would make the laptop unbootable. Now, if this does happen to you, just press the power button for a minute and you should be good to go. Now, balance mode lowers the PL1 to 65 watts, but we're still at 92 degrees with the auto fan, and silent mode drops the PL1 to 30 watts, 8,029 points and 63 degrees. Now, this could be because although GP66 has 6 heat pipes, only 2 are on the CPU. MSI has always been good at giving us good control over the performance and the fans. Now, the GP66 does have a mux switch, so you can choose between hybrid or dedicated GPU mode. Personally, I would just stay with dedicated GPU mode because the battery is only 63 watt hours. Now, the the GE66 has a 99 watt hour battery. So on a GP66, using hybrid mode, super battery mode with battery saver, 50% brightness, which is 129 nits, I actually only got 2 hours 20 minutes of streaming YouTube, so which is not that long. In addition to auto and max fans, you can create your own fan curve for both the CPU and the GPU. Now this is useful because in silent mode, the auto fan would cause the fans to pulse up and down, which was a bit distracting and also a little bit loud at 37 decibels. But using the fan curve, you can basically turn the fans off until the CPU or GPU hits say 60 or 70 degrees. And this made the laptop silent. Now here I show Battlefield 5 using DX11 Ultra settings during a 64 player map. This game really stresses both the CPU and the GPU. At the top is turbo mode with max fan, in the middle is balanced, and at the bottom is silent mode, both using the auto fan. Both turbo mode and balanced mode sees the GPU using up to about 120 watts. The main difference is the power to the CPU. 60 watts in turbo mode and 46 watts to the CPU. And since this game loves a fast CPU, that will make a difference. In silent mode, the 3080 drops down to a max of 114 watts, but the CPU drops down to 30 watts and a much lower clock rate. But the resulting thermals are better, keeping the CPU below 90 and the 3080 below 80 degrees. As for fan noise under load, max fan is quite loud at 55 decibels. Balanced mode with auto fan is pretty decent at 44 decibels, but I really did like the 39 decibels on silent mode. Heck, that is only slightly louder than it was at idle. Do we take much of a frame rate hit at the lower power modes? Well, yeah, we do, but still, 121 FPS in silent mode is still great. And remember, this is only a 144Hz panel anyway. Now the underside is made of plastic. It has decent air intakes and you have a total of 11 screws to remove. Now be careful to note, 2 screws are actually shorter than the rest. Now in order to remove the back panel, you need to remove the plastic hinge cover too, using a plastic tool. Now by default, you do get fast single rank by 8 RAM. 2 sticks of 8GB, and of course HI Devolution can increase this to 64GB if you wish. Now it is a shame that for $2,000 you only get a 512GB SSD, but at least there is a second one. The 2-watt speakers are mounted at the sides, much like the GE66, but they do sound much better, not as tinny and also quite loud. I thought the chassis thermals were quite decent too. The aluminium deck only peaks at 41 degrees and that is at the back. The keyboard itself and the underside are very comfortable. The black anodized keyboard deck does show the odd smudge, but I much prefer it over to the brushed finish MSI used to use. As for the one-piece precision touchpad, I wasn't super pleased with it. Perhaps I've been spoilt with the likes of the Legion 7 touchpad, but I found this to be on the small side and the integrated mouse buttons were very stiff to press. The SteelSeries keyboard is pretty decent. The FN key is moved to the right, but that can be swapped with the Windows key via their software. But in doing so, they made it and the right control very small. Now, one benefit of this position of the FN key is that volume and brightness controls can be accessed with one hand. The cooler boost fan can be switched on and off using the F8 key. The keys have excellent RGB. The patterns can be changed by pressing the F9 key. The lid is also black anodized. Has a nice clean look to it. I liked it a lot. The hinges are also nice and stiff, and it is nice that MSI didn't skimp on these to cut prices. Here is what the webcam looks like. So for a 720p webcam, I'm pretty impressed. Now the GE66 had a 1080p one, and that was okay, probably a little bit sharper than this, but the microphone is much better on the GP66. This is what it's like when I'm typing, and when I increase the max fan, it'll ramp up and then it'll subdue a little bit. There you go, pretty decent. All in all, the GP66 was a pleasure to game on. There was no light bar at the front like you get on the GE66, but the RGB keyboard is great and responsive. Assassin's Creed using the ultra high preset runs nice and smooth and runs quite cool with the max fan. Now it tops the pack, beating a 125W 3070 by 8%, but the 3080 model is 14% more expensive than the 3070 model, so begs the question, is the 3080 really worth it? especially at 1080p. Here is Cyberpunk 2077, 1080p with ray tracing set to ultra and DLSS set to balanced. I showed turbo with max fan at the top, balanced in the center, and silent mode at the bottom, again both with auto fan. Now again, I am a big fan of silent mode, low thermals and quiet fans, and yet decent frame rates with extreme performance only being 17% faster. I also tested it at 2560 by 1440 in case you do opt to use an external monitor, and got a respectable 58 FPS. I managed to get an overclock of 156 MHz on the core and tested it in Shadow of the Tomb Raider. This game seems to like an overclock, and you do see a nice performance bump, with 149 FPS versus 139. A nice 7% boost. It even put it on par with the 165W 3080 in the 17-inch Evoque X170KM, and that uses a desktop 11900K CPU. Far Cry 6 didn't see the same uplift as it does. It is more CPU bound. 94 FPS is pretty decent, and at QHD 86 FPS is still very good, especially when the minimum frame rate was about the same as 1080p. So how would I sum up the MSI GP66? Well, it certainly is fast, and sometimes you can find it on sale. Make sure to check out the laptop buying guide from Gizmo Slip. I put that link in the description below. Granted, MSI cut a few corners to reduce the price, but the build quality is still very good. The speakers and the mic are definitely better than the GE66, but it is a shame we only have a 144Hz 1080 panel. I definitely would have liked to have an option of either the 360Hz Full HD or a QHD option. Thank you for watching. If you found my video of value, smash that like button and subscribe to see more in-depth laptop reviews. Bye now.